Alright, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to talk about the new most popular gun in Warzone, the Kilo 141. We're going to talk about what are the best attachments to use, giving you guys the best overall class setup, because there are two different kind of classes that you guys can run. One more for a slower player like myself, the other class setup more for somewhat aggressive player trying to get the most kills possible in every lobby. So we talk about the barrels, obviously the grips, the ammo types, all those kind of things, breaking them down and tell you guys what works best together to give you the best overall class setup. So if you guys learned anything new in today's video, it does help you guys make a better class setup. Please make sure you guys leave a like on the video. And if you guys are brand new to the channel, 95% of you guys that watch the videos are not subscribed. So if you guys do want to subscribe. So starting off, the first thing we're taking a look at is basically a breakdown of all the barrels. This is one of the most unique guns in reference to it does have a silent barrel, which actually does give this gun increased range with that silent barrel, which is an excellent attachment. All three barrels I'm going to 100% recommend on this gun, which is probably the first, the silent barrel. You guys will see all the stats on the screen. The biggest benefit about it is it increases your bullet velocity and your range. In exchange, you get a slightly slower aim down sight time. So in Warzone, where you're trying to get those best overall time to kill stats, getting an increase in bullet velocity, which is going to help your accuracy at long range, and increase in range is obviously going to help your overall range. Extend it out a little bit further definitely helps out a lot. As far as the SOCOM barrel, I definitely think it's probably the more go-to barrel due to a couple simple reasons. You get a 30% increase in range. Your aim down sight's about 10% faster than that of the Prowler barrel, which you 100% will notice. It also has a no effect on your straight speed, so as far as your ability to win one-on-one gunfights, it does help out a lot there. Your hip fire spread is better. As far as your movement speed, it's only 0.5% slower, which you will not notice. As far as the bullet velocity, which I'm going to start talking about a lot more in my more recent class setup videos, you're going to notice it a lot more talked about. The bullet velocity is average for assault rifles, which is definitely what makes it excellent. So it basically really has no negatives. In exchange, you get a 30% more range and a better recoil pattern. And on a gun that has obviously no recoil, you want to go for the attachment that's going to give you the least amount of negatives, which this is it. Like I said, I do recommend the Prowler barrel because you get a 45% increase to your overall range, which is the most out of any long barrel for any assault rifle, which obviously makes this a god tier weapon for range. You obviously get a slightly better recoil pattern, which you guys can see the difference between the SOCOM and the Prowler recoil on the screen. Obviously, with a gun that basically has no recoil, getting less recoil is not a big difference. You do get a 4% slower movement speed, which you 100% will notice, along with 8% slower straight speed, which once will notice. You also get a 35% worse hip fire, which is about 15 to 20% worse than that of the SOCOM barrel, which once again you will notice. But the biggest factor for switching, obviously with that range increase, you're going to get the second best bullet velocity out of every single gun in the game, which is obviously going to help you to be able to hit those shots at long range, which is probably why this is one of the most popular weapons. As I said, bullet velocity is not really talked about. What it allows you to do is hit your shots better at longer range, and also increases your overall accuracy at long range. So getting a better bullet velocity is obviously going to help out. Makes the gun go from average to top tier assault rifle by switching from the SOCOM to the Prowler barrel with that bullet velocity. So me personally, I'm almost always going to be using the Prowler barrel. That range increase is massive, the bullet velocity increase is massive, and I 100% recommend it. The biggest difference with these barrels, as far as talking about what the biggest difference between which barrel should be stacked together, we're taking a look at those best class setups. My personal favorite attachment to use on the Kilo is the VLK sight. We're making a video very soon in depth talking about why it's so good. The difference is if I'm using the SOCOM barrel, which is obviously the shorter barrel, I'm going to be stacking with that Merc foregrip, which is obviously going to give me an increased movement speed and a slower straight speed. So I basically get a faster movement speed. In exchange, you get a slower straight speed, which is obviously going to help out a lot. So your aim down sight time is now going to be at basically the same level of that Prowler barrel. Your straight speed is going to be at that Prowler barrel level as well. But in exchange, you're getting a 3% faster movement speed. So you basically get the movement speed increase to get the same stats. Prowler barrel, which is what I recommend most. The other class up, obviously, if you're using the Prowler barrel, you're going to get that increased recoil control. You want to be stacking it with that Commando fork, which is obviously going to help with that stabilization. In exchange, you only really get a slower movement speed. So we're trying to get the most range, get the most accuracy. Your movement speed is now irrelevant. So by stacking with the Commando, you're going to get the best long barrel class setup possible. Obviously, like I said, using that VLK sight, Obviously with the Kilo using the Mono Express or the 60 round mag, basically rounds out the class setup for it. The biggest difference we're talking about as far as the biggest factor you guys will notice if you're watching any other YouTubers, any other Twitch streamers class setups, a lot of people are still trying to decide between the VLK versus the canted sight. I did a little bit of in-depth research, obviously specifically for the Kilo. The biggest difference between the two sights, obviously first initially, VLK is a 3x zoom. You guys will be able to see on the screen. I'll showcase the two differences between both of them. The canted is going to be a 3.25 zoom, which is slightly better. But for me, that field of view, getting a little bit less of a zoom, I personally prefer. And then obviously with that canted, you get a hybrid sight, which allows you to get a red dot, which I'm not a fan of that red dot at all. It's really, really zoomed in, which I really don't like. So to get a little bit better field of view, to be able to see enemies at the outskirts of your sight, I prefer. As far as the biggest difference between these two is the aim down sight time. The VLK is only about 16 milliseconds slower versus that canted hybrid is 40 milliseconds slower, so 1.5 frames slower, which you definitely will notice in game as far as stacking it with any kind of the long barrels that have a slower aim down sight time. You will definitely notice. As far as the difference between the idle sway, the biggest factor I noticed with using the VLK and the canted is if you're mounted or prone, your idle sway basically becomes non-existent. If you're just, doing anything other trying to shoot somebody, the idle sway, to me, they're both identical. As far as the recoil pattern, once again, these are two sights that will affect your recoil pattern. They had an almost identical recoil pattern, probably really such a minimal difference you won't notice. But I do personally think the VLK is better. You're going to get a better field of view. Obviously a lot slower aim down sight time. Personally prefer the VLK, but as far as the difference between both, they're both excellent. To get a slightly more zoom for that canted, if you're stacking with that Prowler trying to get those more long range kills, that's probably where I'm going to recommend it. But I personally prefer the VLK sight. And as far as the difference between the grips, this is something very minimal to talk about. As you guys know, the Merc is the #1 new grip to use. I'm only going to be comparing it to the Commando because I really don't think anybody's using the Ranger anymore. If you're using that Merc, like I said, you get about a 3.5% faster movement speed. In exchange, you get a slightly better recoil. The biggest thing is you do get a slower stray speed, so I'm really only going to recommend stacking that Merc with that SOCOM, because if you stack with the Prowler, you're going to get terrible aim down sight time and a terrible stray speed, which is going to make you your ability to win more gunfights a lot less. Like I said, if I'm using the Prowler, I'm going to be stacking with the Commando. They basically work well best together. I really could stack the Commando with the SOCOM, but I just think that Merc stacks better with both, so I'm really not going to mix either of these two. The Commando to me goes with the Prowler. The Merc goes with the SOCOM. They counter each other best to give the best overall stats for the gun. And as far as the biggest factor for me, as far as what makes the best class setup, the biggest difference between the ammo, the 100 round mag, I personally will never ever recommend. You get an 8.5% slower movement speed. Terrible. You're literally better off using an LMG at this point. In exchange, you get a 45 millisecond slower aim down sight time, which is almost 2.5 frames slower. You guys will definitely notice if you're stacking it with like my best class setup using the 100 round mag. The difference between the 50 and 60 is same aim down sight time, but in exchange, you're getting about 1.5% slower movement speed with that 60 round mag. Obviously in Warzone, any gun, any class setup, you guys know I always recommend the 10 extra mags. But if you are running that SOCOM barrel with that Merc foregrip, trying to get the fastest overall movement speed, I'm going to recommend the 50 round mag on that class setup, just because you're going to get the fastest movement speed possible. And obviously you're trying to get the most kills. If you're able to move around a lot faster, you definitely will be able to notice a big factor in getting more kills in Warzone. So the 50 round mag, if you're using it, I would recommend stacking with that SOCOM barrel and the Merc foregrip, which is going to give you the fastest movement speed possible. You actually will get an increase in your movement speed using those three attachments together. So that's pretty much it for today's video. As I said, if you guys did learn anything new, please leave a like. It greatly helps the channel grow. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys are still watching, you have not subscribed, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. You guys already know the best and only code to use on all of your scuff and GFUEL purchases is code Trapgod. I never really say thank you too much in videos, but I recently just got a new apartment, which was a huge upgrade from what I'm currently living in, and that is thanks to you guys for supporting the channel and using my discount code on my sponsors' products. So I just want to say thank you guys for that. New house tour will be up very soon in the next week or so. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys learned anything, like I said, leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you guys like to. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one.